Part 2. Abuse and Neglect of Children. The statistics are staggering. The victims are young. The perpetrators are everywhere. Our agenda includes statistics, social workers overwhelmed, shaken baby syndrome. What's wrong with this picture? Trusted adults? Teaching profession. One teacher made a difference. And children with disabilities.
Statistics. On this slide, a variety of statistics are included, which were reported in different years. Read through them. What do these statistics tell you? Victims. Between 1995 and 1997, 78% of child abuse and neglect deaths were children under the age of 5. 38% under the age of 1 year. Girls are sexually abused 3 times more often than boys. Boys are at greater risk for emotional neglect and serious physical injury. However, sexual abuse of boys may be vastly underreported. Women sexually abused before age 18 have lower levels of interpersonal function and social adjustment as adults and are less likely to form trusting relationships. The same can be said for men. Perpetrators. There are common indicators for the perpetrators. Substance abuse, lack of parental skills, poor understanding of child's normal developmental path, young maternal age, poverty, and a history of domestic violence. An estimated 1/2 of all homes with adult violence also involve child abuse or neglect. Child molestation remains a crime most often perpetrated by relatives and acquaintances rather than strangers. 1/3 of all child molesters incarcerated in state prisons nationwide had attacked their own children or stepchildren, the majority of whom were age 12 or younger. More than half of the child victims of rape or sexual assault are age 12 or younger. Let's take a look at Judging Amy, a CBS fall program in 2001, where Maxine sets a politician straight.
We don't want the children to feel intimidated in any way.
This is incredible. Sanctuary House is light years ahead of its time.
Well, in fact, child advocacy centers are happening all over the country.
Fully equipped facility for abused children who can't afford therapy and medical care.
As I said, financial considerations are not the main issue.
That way, less advantaged children do not have to suffer in silence. Children from broken homes, children of single mothers, they have a place to go.
Mr. Stanley, are you hearing impaired? Do you have some kind of a listening disability? Because this is not a place for poverty-stricken children. This is a place for abused children. And I hope you're not trying to imply that only poor children are at risk of being abused. I hope you're not sending the message that children from, to borrow your horrible term, broken homes, or children of single mothers are somehow more vulnerable to being beaten or molested. The fact is that 80% of child abuse occurs in intact two-parent homes. And I resent the hell out of you marginalizing
Maxine.
and ghettoizing
Maxine.
the issue of abuse so that your lily-white, upwardly mobile, SUV-driving, latte-drinking constituents can sleep better at night.
Maxine!
Somebody has to say it. It's Maxine Gray, with an A, not an E.
Maxine's my hero. I'd like to be as straightforward and articulate and passionate as she is. Maxine's point is important. Abuse and neglect of children is not just a problem of poverty and single-parent families. Again, overgeneralization and assumptions mislead our thinking about this issue. Let's talk about social workers and the child welfare systems. According to Newsweek, January 20th, 2003, this terrible malfunction of the child welfare system was happening across the country. New Jersey lost track of 110 children suspected of being abused and neglected. Florida, at least 37 children died of abuse and neglect over the last 5 years, despite warnings to caseworkers that they were in danger. Arizona Child Protective Agencies failed to remove a cocaine-addicted newborn from her house, where she later died from second-hand crack smoke. Michigan lost track of 302 children. Caseworkers are embattled. They need more funds, more caseworkers, and updated technology. Consider shaken baby syndrome. Signs and symptoms range from minor to major neurological alterations. 20% of cases are fatal in the first days after the injury. Survivors range from mild to moderate to severe problems. We need to educate children about shaken baby syndrome at an early age because they may become babysitters or may be left in charge of young ones. Television news often reports the cases where a baby has died from being shaken. It's often a source for television dramas, but more often there are children who are shaken who come to schools with their neurological damage. What's wrong with this picture? When I first saw this picture, I thought, well, I guess that's the way rich children play dress-up. When I asked a colleague what he thought of this picture, he stated emphatically, "That's obscene." Did you notice that when a man falsely confessed to this murder, then the news media consistently showed pictures of Jean Bonnet in a typical little girl dress? We may never know who raped and killed this beautiful child, but we do know that someone saw this child as a sexual object. Let's talk about trusted adults and abuse. Consider the recent scandals in the Catholic Church. In Chicago, $300 million were paid out in lawsuits. In Boston, $10 million was a settlement to 50 cases. Cardinal apologized and handed over 60 to 70 names of priests accused of abusing children. One former priest had 130 victims and was sentenced to 9 to 10 years in prison. There are cases in Dallas, Lafayette, Tucson, Arizona, and Californian archdiocese attempted to file bankruptcy rather than lose church properties to pay for sexual abuse lawsuits. In Newsweek's March 4, 2002 article entitled "Sins of the Fathers" by Miller and France, they discussed the international aspect of the Catholic Church problems with abuse in Ireland, Australia, the USA, and elsewhere. In this article, the author suggested that there is an institutions reaction pattern that was evident in the Catholic Church and in the Enron company. That response includes 1. Deny it. 2. Delay it. 3. Dissemble it. 4. Fool themselves into thinking that all is well. What is difficult for me to understand is the lack of application of law to the institutions of the Catholic Church. If someone reports suspected abuse to a principal or a teacher, they are required by law to report allegations to the police. Why doesn't that apply to the Catholic Church? Some argue that it is because of the confidentiality of the confessional. But I would counterpoint, when parents or the child or a teenager report abuse to a priest or a bishop, that is not a confession. Therefore, it must be reported to the law. Yet, this problem is not just the Catholic Church. It's been found in all denominations, in sports, in scouts, in schools. Schools should be a safe place for each and every child. Are students safe at school from predators? How can we keep schools safe? Consider these real-life examples. Mrs. Shrieker, a first-grade teacher, would shriek at a child, "I just want to snatch you bald-headed." Think about what a violent statement that is. Is it abuse? Mrs. P.E. science teacher routinely used sarcasm and would roll her eyes in disgust when a student would ask a simple question. One student with a significant learning disability was a hard worker, very polite and cooperative, but he had trouble with reading, organization, and all written work. One day he walked into the science with his resource teacher. As they entered the room, he pleasantly asked, "Are we going to do that rock stuff today?" Mrs. Science teacher rolled her eyes and said, "Of course, David. What did you think we were going to do?" At the end of the period, as we left the room, David commented to his resource teacher, "I wish she'd stop rolling her eyes at me. I'm not stupid." Is this abuse or just terrible teaching? Mr. Middle School art teacher liked to cop a feel as he helped the girls put on their aprons for working with messy clay or paint. To keep schools safe, we must be professional enough and brave enough to report any questionable events or behaviors of other teachers or staff to the principal for investigation. This is extremely difficult, but critically important. Consider this true story. Lupe, an 8th grader, was kicked out of Mr. Social Studies class, so he went to the resource room. When I asked why he was kicked out, Lupe shrugged. "I was just joking around." He had a mild learning disability, very high IQ, quick sense of humor, didn't like men in authority, and enjoyed pushing the buttons of adults to get a reaction. In fact, he was accomplished at that. I liked Lupe, although few of his other teachers did. He was somewhat hyper, but didn't have ADHD. It just took a lot of creative teaching to reach him, and never let him push your buttons. So we went back to settle the problem. As we entered the room, Mr. Social Studies yelled, "Lupe, I could rip your effing lips off!" Yes, he actually shouted the F word. In shock, I turned to Lupe and said, "Lupe, obviously Mr. Social Studies can't talk to us now. Go straight back to my room and stay there. Wait for me there. Do you understand?" With a subdued nod, Lupe left. I turned to Mr. Social Studies, prepared for another tirade of obscenities. That did not happen. When I asked him what the student did, he evaded the question and demanded that the student be removed from his class immediately. What would you do if you were the resource teacher? Here's a happier story. One teacher made a difference. Mrs. Jane Opliger taught children in what was termed an educable, mentally retarded classroom in St. Louis, Missouri, for 20 years. The children called her Ms. Opp, and she taught them many important lessons. A lifelong learner herself, Miss Opp, at the age of 87, was enrolled in a readin', writin', and recitin' class at the Senior Center in Austin, Texas. Here is her memorable story. You want your child to be a Gerby baby? Picture sky blue sparkling eyes, curly, soft, light blonde hair, a happy, ever-ready sweet smile. That was Tommy Thompson, a 5-year-old treasure who came to me with his adoring foster parent, who was a treasure herself, round and soft. Tommy trusted her so completely that she could leave him there with me on the first day without a tear or a worry. I don't think he would ever know how lucky he was to have been placed in her care. What a pleasure he was to mingle and fit right into our schedule. His abilities were limited, and he learned slowly, but as usual he learned to return little fights over toys or words in the schoolyard. We would have peaceful talks about what happened and who hit first and who started and who didn't do anything. Tried to find that talking about anger or fighting could solve a problem without a fight, without hurting his friend or being hurt or facing the principal. Tommy, after about 3 years, went on to the next older group and then to high school. One day, as I parked behind the 5 and Dime, I hear, Hi, Miss Opp. It's me over here. I got a job. I take out the trash and I bring in the new stuff. I'm the back door man." He said he was married and had a baby, and he said, "My wife gives me trouble and doesn't do what I say, so I beat her up till she does." I reminded him of our talks about peace and talking about problems, and that it didn't do any good to hurt others. He looked so remorseful. The next visit to the 5 and Dime, Tommy called out to me. He was so happy, saying, "It works, Miss Opp, it works. I talked to my wife and I don't hit her anymore, and I remember what you said, and it works." Tommy was in his loving foster home from the age of about 2 until he was 18. His birth mother was a successful lawyer and his father a prominent physician. They were not able to face the life of raising a retarded child. I often think of what they missed in their life. Children with disabilities. They are more vulnerable to predators, less likely to be able to report abuse. Children experiencing abuse may demonstrate behaviors similar to ADD, ADHD, and therefore be misdiagnosed. Most importantly, abuse can result in disabilities. Currently, we have significant research that demonstrates the terrible impact of abuse and neglect upon the brain. Read the article, "Abuse of Children with Disabilities" by Cosmos. It describes the impact of abuse and neglect on a child's brain. This is required reading for our class and should be read by every teacher and every parent.
The ultimate questions are, how will you make a difference? How will you make education special? How will you make the world safe for children? Thanks for listening.